The silver raid is scheduled for May 15th, 2022. Will it be a boom or a bust? Tell me, what is the definition of insanity? We're going to look at some numbers and rationale, and even though I hate to admit it, look at why the silver raid movement is doomed to fail. Coming up. Hey everyone, welcome to Campbell's Coins. I've talked about the silver squeeze movement quite a bit. My first video about it was in January 2021 and talked about why it wouldn't work. There were 2 or 3 more silver squeeze events in 2021. These morphed into silver raids. Silver squeeze refers to mostly buying stock, while silver raid refers to buying physical silver. People were buying physical silver during the silver squeeze and buying stock during the silver raid. So they're basically interchangeable terminology. The most that these events accomplished was the silver price rose about $1.50 each time, then subsided a few weeks later. Premium inflated though, and remained inflated, effectively becoming the new silver price. This topic is very confusing because there's a lot of contradicting info out there. I'm not saying one is wrong or one is right. I'm just going off of a very basic notion myself and giving my opinion about it. We have another silver raid movement coming, but will it work? Here is why it won't work, but also why it should. There are 2 forces involved, and the end goal for each is this. I think there might be some butthurt people after this video. Guys, this isn't personal, and I don't want people to feel like they are being attacked. I want people to understand that silver doesn't obey the laws of the marketplace as we know them. The laws of supply and demand doesn't affect it anymore like other commodities and items in existence. This is the supply of silver mined each year all over the world. This is the demand of silver from all over the world. As you can see, silver has been morphed into mostly an industrial metal. As you can also see, each year there is typically a surplus of silver in the world. I take a screenshot from the Silver Institute's page on silver mined in demand every year around the same time. This year I noticed something I didn't expect. Last year at this time, there was a 23.5 million ounce surplus of silver expected. Looking at the chart, there is now a 51.8 million ounce deficit. That's pretty big. That means that there was more than 75 million ounces of silver demanded than supplied in 2021. For 2022, it looks like they are projecting a similar silver deficit of 71.1 million ounces. Before we continue down this path, there was something else that I noticed that made me question the validity of this page. Figures from past years were changing. This is a screenshot I made in 2020, and now this one in 2022. I understand a previous year's numbers changing, but why are figures changing from 10 years ago? And why are they changing each year? I'm not trying to dramatize anything here because changes in ounces are very subtle and they're not really significant, but I do find it interesting. My ignorance on how the Silver Institute collects their data is probably to blame. If we were to look at these numbers, it would appear the silver squeeze movement in 2021 was indeed successful and that there was more demand than silver supply. But it ultimately failed because spot price didn't reflect this shortage. In fact, in other years, there was a deficit. Silver's price remained fairly static. I think this is the only commodity in the world not affected by shortages, and I'm being extremely sarcastic with my point. In 2013, there was a 31.4 million ounce silver supply shortage. Yet here's the silver price chart for 2013. Does this make sense to you? Maybe surplus from previous years were used? I really doubt it because there were chronic silver deficits for almost every year from 2000 to 2010. If there is a hint of war, the price of oil rises. There doesn't have to be a shortage, the price will still go up. There are oceans of oil in existence. It's hardly rare like silver, but its price reflects a supply and demand dynamic. Russia went to war with Ukraine, and they are expecting food shortages because Russia provides the world with a lot of fertilizer. The fertilizer that Russia exports isn't on the sanctions list. This doesn't mean that it will be easy to get, but food prices are expected to rise even more than they have under Biden. The threat of a shortage makes the price rise. When there is an actual shortage of silver, the price falls. That is very interesting. In order to have an effective raid, there needs to be a vastly diminishing supply and a massively increased demand. Maybe the Silver Raiders did it last year, or maybe these numbers in the Silver Institute's webpage are incorrect. In an unmanipulated marketplace, if there is a surplus of supply, the price falls, and vice versa. A deficit leads to an increased price. But the silver market isn't fair, and it is highly manipulated. That was the thesis of the Hunt brothers in the 1980s. They knew about the rarity of silver and its manipulation and decided to corner the market to A, show the world this manipulation, and B, make billions while they were at it. And they effectively were able to do this for a short period of time. They cornered the silver market and drove the price to $50 an ounce in 1980. Adjusted for inflation, that silver price is $175 per ounce. You're telling me after 4 decades of increased silver demand, we aren't seeing a higher silver price, but we're seeing one at half that from 1980? The problem that I have with the silver raid movement is knowing that these events didn't exactly work last year. Who's pushing it now, and what is their goal? I believe the goal of the silver raid movement is to make bank and prey upon people's fear and ignorance. What happens during these events is the spot price goes up for a little bit, but the premium doubles. The most that these events are going to do is hurt yours and everyone else's wallets. Dealers will raise premiums to counteract their very short-term supply disruption, and the buyer clamors all over themselves to buy high-priced silver. These silver raid events might short the silver market for a few months, but that's about it. I think you should look at who profits from a silver squeeze or silver raid movement. Is it big bullion dealers? They certainly increase their pricing when the silver squeeze events happen. It's not like it's being sprung upon them. It's been announced. It's May 15th. This is when the 4th silver raid is taking place. If I'm a dealer and I knew that a bunch of people were going to buy on May 15th, I would just buy a crap ton of silver at $22 an ounce and raise my premiums leading to and on the silver raid day. The more people buy, the more my premiums go up. They also are getting large volume orders at this time, so it makes sense that they raise their pricing. Dealers don't want to run out of all their silver stock, even if it's just for a month or so. Are silver miners and suppliers profiting? Possibly. I get it too. They have been mining this precious metal for decades and it hasn't been given a proper marketplace. It's constantly manipulated downwards. I can totally see these movements started by such organizations in a way to finally get theirs. Keith Neumeyer with First Majestic Silver has often vented his frustration on the silver price. I believe in 2020 he said that if the silver price falls below $18 an ounce, he would simply stop selling his supply, and he hoped other miners would do the same until the silver price rose to a respectable level. For the record, I don't believe Keith Neumeyer is instigating these silver squeeze or silver raid movements or involved in any sense. I have great respect for the man. I'm simply saying I understand his frustrations with the silver market. If one silver miner is that frustrated, it's an indicator that other miners might be as well. The point is, the silver supply might be hampered for a couple of months and prices might go up, but eventually supply will catch up and prices will drop. We would need to be purchasing Hunt brother level amounts of silver every single year to make a dent and affect the silver price. You also have to look at the frustration of the silver stacker. They have heard for decades the silver price is poised to launch, and it hasn't really happened, especially with everything else going on. As soon as silver hits this $40 to $50 spot price range, I think we will see a lot of people exiting their silver positions. As many new stackers we see coming into the silver markets, I believe we will see a similar amount of current stackers exiting, keeping supply and prices relatively the same. For the record, I think exiting at $50 an ounce is a foolish idea. Remember the inflation adjusted price of $175 an ounce that I mentioned earlier? I think that this is a more realistic price for silver. Ironically, $175 per ounce silver compared to the current gold price comes out to a 10-to-1 price ratio, which is fairly close to the mining ratio of gold to silver at 8-to-1. I hate doing these topics because I'm such a huge proponent of silver and I want it to do well. I want you to buy silver. I think silver at $22 is incredibly undervalued, especially with a dwindling mineable supply. I'm just trying to give people a little dose of reality. Ultimately, I side with the sentiment of the silver raid movement, but when one sees these movements, just please stack responsibly. If you want silver, get some before these events happen. Once it hits, we will see premiums balloon. I don't espouse for stacking silver with a premium over 20%, but you're free to do what you want. One thing I know for certain after seeing the silver market for the better part of 2 decades, someone out there does not want the price of silver to rise. Your time is your most precious asset, and I appreciate you spending it here with me. If you're interested in other topics like this one, check out the other videos I have on my channel. Thank you all for watching. This is Campbell's Coins, and that is my 2 cents.